Posted next to the link for this video is a document entitled Psych 295 Chapter 10 PE Hypotest Independent Formula Worksheet. Download that document and have it handy as we work through the next few slides. You will also want to have some copies of that formula worksheet available to work some of the engagement problems. It will make the computation of the independent samples t-test formula really easy. The process we use to compute the estimated standard error combines the variability for both groups. On the slide, you see the symbol SP squared. It stands for pooled variance. Because we're working with two groups of subjects, we have to combine the sum of squares values we compute for each group and calculate one number that represents the combined or pooled variance for the groups. On the formula worksheet, in step 1, you compute the degrees of freedom for each group. In step 2, you compute the pooled variance using the formula you see on the slide. It looks complicated, but it's pretty simple. One sums the two SS values in the numerator, and then sums the two degrees of freedom values in the denominator, and then divides one number by the other. In step 3 on the formula worksheet, you will calculate the estimated standard error, which is the number that you will use in the denominator of the final independent samples t-test formula. The estimated standard error formula is shown on the slide, and it is step 3 on the worksheet. Taking the pooled variance number you calculated in step 2, you divide that same number by the n of one group, and then divide the same pooled variance number by the n of the second group. Notice that this operation is under the square root umbrella, so in keeping with the order of operations sequence of events you learned in Chapter 1, do the divisions for both fractions first, then add the values you generated by those divisions together. Then, in the last step, take the square root of that sum. If you click on the worked example of the formula worksheet, you can see how this operation progresses through all the steps. For the final t-test, you divide the difference between your M1 and M2 by the number you generated in step 3 of the formula worksheet. So once you compute the t-test, now it's time to compare your test statistic with a critical t-value in the t-distribution table. Finding the critical value in the t-distribution table works the same way as it did for the single sample t-test, with the exception of how you compute the degrees of freedom. To find your starting point in the left column, because you have two groups of people, you have to take into consideration both sample sizes, and the way you do that is to add the two degrees of freedom values together. Then you use that number as your starting point. If you're using the formula worksheet, you will have already computed the 2 degrees of freedom in step 1. Thus, all you have to do is add those two DF values together.